Welcome to the Fight with Depression podcast for people who want to improve their mental health. My name is Christopher Boussard, and this episode is part one of my conversation with former firefighter paramedic and founder of Revital Colorado, Jordan Long. So without too much further ado, I will let you listen to this conversation. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. Today we have a very special guest on our show, and I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit more. But if you have been following our podcast or anything, you would have heard me talk about Revital Colorado. So I would like to welcome the founder of Revital, Jordan Long. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. It's good to be here. And I know it's kind of been a long time coming. We've talked about this for a while, so I apologize it's taken a minute. But I'm Jordan Long and founder of Revital Colorado, former firefighter paramedic with Adams County Fire Rescue. I've got a wife and 2 kids that are the pride of my life, and just glad to be here and excited to have some conversation with you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming up. I guess you gave us a little bit of background into yourself, so that kind of transitions into my next question is, why did you start Revital? Mm-hmm. And I guess also, why did you start Revital, and what is Revital?
Yeah. Great question. And I'll kind of give, a little bit of the backstory personally, and I share this with all of the agencies. You've heard this before, I think, a couple times, but like I said, I started in the fire service back in 2010. There was really no mention of what this career looks like from an emotional standpoint, relational standpoint, how it can affect you personally. As you're well aware, when we started, all of the training was centered around what the job is and how we get it done in a safe and effective manner. And so for myself personally, I just had no awareness and no training, and I was told not to bleed this stuff on my spouse. And so I chose to not share with my wife what I was seeing and going through at work, which, having young kids at home, at the time, we weren't getting paid very well. So started another business on the side and just had no work-life balance. Eventually this led to communication issues, relational issues, and then seeing and dealing with the stuff we were on a daily basis, unhealthy coping strategies, right? Starting to use alcohol to try to sleep because I wasn't sleeping, going from 48-hour shifts with minimal to no sleep at the station I was at, to working another job for 3 or 4 of my 4 days. There came a pretty significant point in time where I can kind of remember some calls that stuck with me, lots of kid calls as a new paramedic. And then I ended up actually pronouncing my aunt on a scene. And I had no emotion to it. I remember wrapping my arms around my cousin and not being able to produce a tear, not being able to shed a tear at the funeral. My wife's like, "Hey, you're emotionless. You're not present at home, and you're not present physically even much." That was kind of my aha moment. But right, like a lot of us, I chose to just say, "I'm fine. I'll deal with it later." And I really didn't think there was an issue. And long story short, 2018, late 2018, my wife and I got into a pretty significant argument, and I just kind of snapped. And that was the moment in time where I knew there was an issue, and she kind of gave me an ultimatum of, you got to choose one career or the other, or you're going to lose your family. And I knew that was not an option for me. And so I went to my chief. I said, "Hey, I've got to resign and go run my other business and take care of my family." And he asked if I would stay kind of a part of the peer support team and department chaplain. And initially I was like, "Man, I'm twisted up inside. You don't want that." But I chose to stick around. And over the next 6 to 8 months really shaped why Revital started, is because I had more buddies reaching out for help than ever before as a peer supporter online. And I think there was just a little bit of that gap between me and the agency. Even though I may have been, respected or liked there, and people felt like they could trust me, there's that trust factor is still an issue, right?
Yeah. And I've seen it too. Once you leave, then people are like, "Oh, you have that separation," and they're like, "Now oh, I can come to you even more so than I did before.
Yeah.
So,
And one of the first calls that I got was to an individual's house, apartment complex that I knew very, very well. I thought we were close, but I had no clue at the depth of which this individual was struggling with alcoholism and some other things. And that led to treatment and rehab, and this individual actually losing their career to alcoholism. Multiple people going through divorces, pulled a gun out of one guy's hands. And there was just some things where I was like, why is this coming at me now? Right. And what are the resources that are really out there for us? There were some incredible, what I call responsive care resources out there, right? A lot of clinicians, psychologists, treatment facilities, but I was like, what are we doing on the front end? And the conversation really started with my former chief 8 months after I left. He took me to a symposium in San Antonio. Powerful content, powerful speakers, fire, police, military. But in between each one, it was go meet our vendors, and 42 of them there, all of them responsive care. And we went to dinner that night, and he just said, hey, we give 5 free visits to each person per year for counseling. We only had 20 total visits last year. Why is that? And I said, well, it's not always comfortable or easy for us to initiate a conversation with somebody we don't feel like gets our job.
yeah.
Even if they do, and even if that's necessary, it's not an easy starting point.
Right.
And so I left there, got on a plane, and started thinking about what I could do just for my old department. And I started thinking about my old hobbies, right? Fly fishing, golf, things that I stopped doing during that 3 to 4 year period where I was pretty unhealthy. Maybe didn't look unhealthy, but I was mentally, emotionally unhealthy. And I was like, how do we just get people in the outdoors, not centered around alcohol, and start the conversation, build community, right? And one of the reasons why I love your podcast and your story, and reasons why we've talked and connected, is depression is a real thing, right? And a lot of these other things that we go through are real, but a lot of them come from isolation. And when we have community in our lives, and we have healthy community, we can curb some of that stuff, and we can build relationships that are meaningful, and support systems that take us well beyond what we ever thought we could come through. And that was really why Revital started. We would not be here. I would not be here if it was not for one individual that believed in the mission and vision of this. She would never want any her name mentioned or any special recognition. But the reality of it is, she supported us heavily from the beginning. She supported my wife and I while we did this. That's the only reason we were able to do it full time. She paid for our legal fees, our branding, our app that we now have 2,400 responders across the state signed up on, in other states. And so we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And so what we do, long story short, we provide 15 to 20 outings per month, completely free of charge for responders and their family members. Really what we're after is longevity in their relationships and longevity in their career, and ultimately helping them find purpose in life, right? Because as you know, my faith is important to me. And if we're not living for a bigger purpose than being a firefighter or a paramedic or police officer, we're lost. And that identity component can crush us after our career. And that's what we're after, but we do it in a way that's relational and community driven, and healthy coping strategies. So fly fishing, horseback riding, mountain biking, rock climbing, woodworking, anything we can do to get responders connected, we do it. We do couples outings, we do family outings, we do spouse only, female first responder. Really anything we can do, that's just the platform to create relationship and build trust. And then lastly, we've got a variety of resource partners on the back end that we can share with these responders and these families, because it's not a matter of if you go through hard times, it's when. Life is hard, our jobs are hard, our schedules are hard. We want them to know that there are a plethora of resources out there for them. So that's kind of we do retreats also. I think we were talking about that before we started this podcast. We do 4 to 6 retreats a year, whether it's responder only or couples retreats. And those have some psychoeducation built into it about how to handle stress, how to communicate with your spouse, those types of things. mixed in with the fun activities.
Yeah. Well, and so our episode that we did with Emily Johnson, we were talking about the difference between being like reactive and proactive. And as first responders, we're reactive. Everything is reactive, and we're starting to. And we talked about how Colorado we're kind of like ahead of the curve.
Very.
As far as recognizing the need for that proactive approach to mental health care. And so it's like, I feel like it's good to share our successes and everything like that, because, we do have a lot of listeners, not just in Colorado, obviously, not just in the US, but worldwide. And so I think it's super important for people to kind of recognize like this is not just a local, our area of Colorado, but how we can take this worldwide. So, I know you've got big visions. You're a big visionary, I think. So I'm gonna, from that perspective, would you like to see, like, let's say, Revital expanding, or would you like to see more organizations start to develop because as like, hey, Revital's doing this, they're really successful, maybe we should start doing something like this? What's your big goal, or what would you like to see?
Yeah, great question. And you did hit it on the head. I do have big visions and big dreams, and that have been laid on my heart, I believe. One of the visions that I really have for Revital is we would love to own a ranch someday, right? Own a ranch where we can have full-time programming, fly responders in and out from other states, give people full access to the ranch, right? That's a big dream, probably 3 to 5 year plan. We need a big budget to do that. But we have already been asked to start chapters in other states. And here's the way I look at it. I don't see competition in this space. One of the reasons why I chose to walk into this space and start collaborating with everybody is because I saw too much protective, this is what we do, this is what they do. And I'm not bad-mouthing, I'm just saying, if you're in this space, there isn't competition. If you're in it for the right reason, you don't care how responders are getting the help that they need. You care that they're getting that help, whatever capacity that is, whether it's through one counseling group or another or Revital. So if other organizations see what we do and they can duplicate it, which there's been a few in Colorado that have tried to start that, good. I'm glad. I wish them well. I'll help. We'll talk through anything that we can do. But because of what we've been able to do, we have a pretty plug and play system, and we can help start chapters in other states. And when my board gives me the go ahead, they've kind of shared, hey, you're tapped out here, like you need help before you start on those endeavors. But that is a goal, right? We've got Revital Colorado. We would love to have Revital Missouri or Revital Oregon, Revital whatever. But anything we can do. One of my buddies in St. Louis, and you hit this on the nail on the head. We run a wellness conference every year with It's a Calling Foundation, powered by Code 4. And no, we don't work exclusively with them, but they're doing incredible work, and they're great partners of ours. And my buddy in St. Louis brought 10 responders the last 2 years to these conferences. And the general response from his people was, wow, we have none of these resources out there. Yeah. And these guys are going through difficult situations in the middle of St. Louis. Right. Yeah. And they got nothing. Yeah. So we are spoiled here. Right. We want to help those states get the access to these types of things. And so my buddy was like, hey man, I want to start something in St. Louis. And he's a big dude. And
I know who you're talking about.
And I go, but he's like, we don't have the outdoor playground that you guys have. And I said, man, start something that you're passionate about. You're a fitness dude, right? And he has started something called Will Be Inspired, doing incredible things out there. And yeah, is it similar to Revital? But it's tailored more to his state, his area, and it's creating change. And so I would challenge people to take the risk, take the step. If they want our help, we're here, and we will do that. But whatever you can do just to start the process.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna plug him a little bit. Will Be Inspired. It's Will WILL the letter B Inspired.
Yep.
Check him out. He's a funny guy. He does some good Instagram posts. I like watching his stuff. Anyway,
He doesn't hold back,
he doesn't hold back,
which I love.
no. What you were talking about the competition aspect of this, and I guess you and I could be seen as competitors, right? You definitely are a lot bigger than we are. You're a nonprofit, where I'm, a for-profit. I guess it's an LLC.
Yeah.
But we do it for different reasons.
Absolutely.
But it's when you and I met. I'm gonna go back a little bit, because the way that that Jordan and I kind of met and got acquainted.
Yeah.
So I was talking with a mutual friend of ours at one of our peer support academies, and I hadn't seen him for a while. He and I connected, and I said, "Hey, this is what I'm looking at doing. This is, because of the whole reactive versus proactive. I was like, man, I would love to be able to get people out doing, these fishing outings or woodworking or whatever." And he said, "Oh, kind of like Jordan with Revital." And I said, "What are you talking about, man? I don't know." So he's like, "Yeah, during our academy, we're gonna be talking about this organization." And he brought it up, and so I said, "Yeah, that's great. That's what I'm looking at doing." And we ended up, I didn't do too much as far as trying to reach out to you or anything. And then it was after the Marshall Fire, which, for the listeners who aren't aware of that, it is the most destructive fire in Colorado history.
Yep.
And so I was one of the first on scene in that, and my shift was on. So Jordan came out after that, came out and talked to our shift and said, "Hey, this is what our organization does." And so Jordan and I started talking there. We're like, "Yeah, let's go out for coffee." And so he and I went out, met for coffee, and sat down, and we're like, "Yeah, this is what I want to do." And I told, I was telling you, I was like, "This is what I want to do." And you're like, "Yeah, this is what I do too." Like, cool. Let's work together. Even though we're not the same organization, our goal is the same. So why not, work with each other? And so now, even though, the fight with depression, which is now, I'm also Topher Wood woodworking, Topher Wood photography. I could be seen as a competitor, but instead, hey man, I'd love to host an outing with you guys.
Absolutely.
So now we're working together for a larger goal, a larger purpose. And I like what you said, that if we're doing it for the right reasons, we're not going to be seen as competitors. So if somebody else from a different state, out of state or whatever, wants to, start something, like, man, I love what Revital's doing. I would love to start our own chapter, our own whatever. Like, what do you think would be the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, so I was actually on a phone call a few months ago with a couple out of Tennessee, and they're really aligned and want to start their own thing out there. And so I was just giving them some insight on how we went about starting. Ultimately our goal would be almost like in the for-profit world, a franchise, right? Where we create this model and it's plug and play. We have all the back end resources that people can utilize. We have different sectors of our app for the state that they reside in. That's down the road, but that's going to be coming. Until then, they can reach out via email, text, phone call, and I will gladly walk them through just the processes, maybe some of the hurdles that we had to overcome. Obviously, in the nonprofit sector, it's always going to be finances that are your hurdle, right? To getting it started, especially with what we do, having, when I tell people we do 15 to 20 outings a month, they're like, "How do you pay for this?" Like, we have people and businesses and grants now that help us fund it. But from the beginning, like I shared with you, there was a single or a few different individuals that really helped, and not everybody has that in their life. And so anything we can share to help with that, we will.
Yeah. And I mean, I would like to see like one organization, let's say, helping another, right?
100%.
You know, if it's like, oh, our organization is doing really well, it's kind of like, you know, how a church will do, right?
Yeah.
You know, hey, we need to help build this other church. Let's start providing financially or whatever it is to build up those other organizations and everything. So, yeah, I mean, do you want to tell people how to get a hold of you? Or?
Yeah. So you can send me an email, jlong@revitalcolorado.org. And that's REV as in Victor, ITAL, Colorado.org. Shoot me an email and put your phone number in there, and I'll get back to you for sure.
Yeah. And you guys are always taking donations too.
Yep.
And if people want, like, I love what you guys do. I want to support your organization because I like what you guys are doing. And I'm going to transition now into how well you guys are doing as far as getting a response from responders. So what do you notice about people who go out on your outings as far as their mental health before and after?
Great question. And this is something that we actually have tracked over the last few years with our surveys, as you're well aware of. We've tweaked them. We're actually currently working on tweaking one for 2024 because we're always trying to improve the data without being too invasive, right? I think one of the ways that you can turn responders off very quickly is by being way too forward and too invasive. We are skeptical and we're going to push you away really quickly. So we try to do it in a very kind of way that doesn't force them into sharing. But really what we found is the stress that they were under going into the outing or before the outing, and maybe of it's just the anxiety of something new versus the way they come out afterwards is night and day. And maybe it's short-lived, maybe it's not. That's one area where we're not able to track that continued stress because they may go back to a stressful 48-hour shift or 10-hour shift as a law enforcement officer and experience the worst thing they've ever had to experience. Yeah. That's where we encourage them to come back, right? Yeah. To not just be one and done. I can share with you consistently, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the number one thing that we hear is, I didn't know how much I needed this until I came.
Yeah.
And that's all of us, right? We don't realize how much we need to decompress, to have community, to get outdoors until we actually do it.
Well, yeah, because, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, you know.
No, never. I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, we talked about with Emily. Like, that's not, you know, she used the analogy, like, you're filling, your box is full, and eventually it's going to overflow.
Totally.
And I think, you know, some of that stuff is you're helping by, you know, reducing that stress or whatever. So people go out on these outings. It's not that they're limited to one outing or they're limited to two. They can come back to you guys and go out and, you know, kind of reset. Like, man, I need a monthly reset.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for us as responders is taking time for ourselves, right? We feel selfish. We're already away from our families for 24, 48, 72 hours at a pop, or 410s where my significant other doesn't know whether I'm coming home or not, right? And then it's like, well, how am I going to tell him or her that I need another 6 to 8 hours away from him just to get my mind right? Yeah. Well, the reality of it is, communication is key in any relationship. Everybody should know that. It's preached to us, but it is the hardest component. If you communicate appropriately and you don't abuse the scheduling of taking time for yourself, like I don't need to golf every day, babe, right? But there may be a day where I'm like, hey, and we love to share with people the stress continuum, right? Because the color coding is a really easy way to share where you're at without getting too deep into the woods. It's like, hey babe, I'm in the orange right now, rough shift, or just life in general. Because I'll be honest with you, majority of people that we talk to and I talk with them about things, it's not work. It's life, right? It's the things that you carry into work that then doesn't allow you the capacity for the complexity of our job to handle those situations and process them appropriately. So our goal is just to share with them, hey, communicate with your significant other what you need. And then when you leave our outing, because you're not hammered drunk at the end of it, you can go be present and more present than you would have been had you not come out. Yeah. And that's the goal. And they can come out as many times as they want. I've always said, if I see somebody abusing it for free fun, I'll let them know. I've yet to see it. Yeah. We're more respectful than that in this community. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I lived in the Orange, right? That was my life. Yeah. And I'm going to be very open. I was the same way. Like, I can't go do this because I'm going to be leaving my family to do something for myself, and that's really selfish. And my therapist that I was talking with, she's like, you have to tell yourself, I'm going to go do something for myself, and I have to be okay with it. Mm-hmm. There's a point where you have to get over your pride and say, I can do something for myself. Yep. And I don't know why we do that, why we say, oh, well, I can't do this for myself because that's, selfish of me. But yeah, it's something that we need to kind of get over our pride, get over our that perspective, because it's your perspective in your own brain. You're the only one who sees that when you have that mentality that, nobody else is looking at you going, oh, you're going out golfing. How selfish are you? How selfish are you because this is your one golf outing of the month, Yeah. So,
well, I think too, with that, we've got to be able to reciprocate that with our significant other, right? They go through their own challenges while we're at work for 48 hours or whatever we're doing. And yes, we need our time, but they may need theirs too. Yeah. Right. I mean, my wife always used to joke when I left the firehouse and was home every night. She's like, "Can you just go somewhere? Like, I used to have my time to myself, and now I'm home." But the reality of it is they need their time too, and we have to be able to communicate that, bidirectionally.
Yeah. Well, and I think not only communicate that, but encourage it. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, why don't you go do something? Why don't you go do something for yourself? Yep. Molly goes out. I think now, since I've retired, Molly goes out more with, just out for coffee Absolutely. With a friend and stuff like that. I don't know if she's sitting right here. So she's not giving me the affirmation or
Denial.
Telling me no. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll talk about it afterwards. I'll see if I get in trouble for that one. I'm just kidding. For you, why do you think that people are going out on these outings? Is it to learn a new skill? Is it to just get away? Is it to hang out with other like-minded individuals?
I think it's kind of a multitude of all the above. I know on their first time going, they're skeptical. They don't know what to expect. Yeah. Because there really, and I say this in a very humble manner, there really hasn't been anything like this before. We've actually had people tell us that this is the only thing they've seen across the nation like this for responders. There are groups like this for vets, but not really anything for responders. So nobody really knows what to expect unless they've been out there before or they've heard from somebody else. I think realistically, the things that we put up, they're fun, right? Because it's led by a current or former responder and somebody else enjoys that activity, naturally other people are going to enjoy it too. Yeah. I may not enjoy every single one that we put up there. I may be like, I don't want to do that. But it's more about the fulfillment that you get from the community that you're around while you're doing it. Right. So I think it's kind of a multitude of all the above.
Yeah. I mean, I have no desire to go out golfing, but I'll take somebody out fishing,
Exactly. Yeah. All of us enjoy different hobbies, and what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. And that's why we want to try to diversify it as much as possible. And that's why getting more solid hosts in place that can foster a positive, encouraging environment, but have their own activities that they love, that they want to share with others, like your woodworking deal, that stuff's awesome. because I don't even know which way to screw a screwdriver, right? I get made fun of at the firehouse all the time.
Like righty, lefty, loosey, tie. I don't even know what. Yeah.
So,
but
yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's why it's good for, people with different skills and different hobbies, different passions and everything to want to go out and host with you guys. How much do you guys have a lot of people just saying, "Hey, I want to start hosting events with you guys"?
I get a lot of people that say it. The ones that actually follow through with it are our core right now. And there's probably ones listening or people that have said that to me that I haven't gotten back to. So my apologies on that piece too. But part of it is what we want them to do is they need to have interacted with Revital a couple times. They need to have been through a couple outings. We need to get to know them a little bit. And then we put them through a 30-minute to an hour host training, right? And it's just about our expectations. What if the conversation gets deep beyond the level of your care? What do you do? How do you schedule? And all of that stuff. So we put them through a little training. And then from there, it's just, put on your schedule what you love to do. Send it to us, and we'll throw it up on the app, and 2,400 responders will see it, and hopefully you get signups. And by and large, as you guys know, because you're on the app, things fill up very quickly.
Yeah.
I put something up yesterday, and I think within 2 minutes it was full with a wait list.
Yeah.
I think that just shows people's longing for this type of stuff. It's different. It gives them something to do, maybe in the middle of the day while their significant other is working and their kids are at school and they don't want to just sit at home and be by themselves. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes you don't want to just sit at home and be in your own head and
But you don't know what else to do.
But you don't. Yeah.
Most of our friends that are outside of this world have 9-to-5 jobs.
Right.
So they can't just go hang out with us in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. They're like, dude, don't you work? I'm like, well, yeah, I do, but different hours than you.
Yeah, I already worked 50 hours this week. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this conversation here. Thank you for listening. Part 2 will conclude the conversation between Jordan and myself. So please make sure that you follow up on episode 2 or part 2 of this episode with Jordan Long and myself. Thank you again for listening. If you have any questions, please go to thefightwithdepression.com and go to the contact page. You can fill out the information and get a hold of me that way. And until next time, God bless.